But I can't miss any of those. I have to go.
For this
Again, that's
don't have to be done.
another stiff neck.
No.
Are you still doing physical?
After
Well, I did
can
my
read this
last
first
one,
and
I
then
think,
vote.
last Thursday, so maybe we'll sit in the hall, unless.
before I
Oh,
eat,
yeah, that's right.
I can read it
How
and
do you
then
know?
vote. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Look at you.
Right.
But at least I have exercises I can do at
Yeah,
home.
you can do it. Yeah. Well, come over. You can. I'll put
Although
you
it's
on
not
my
an actual Barberton
home
logo
gym.
folder.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not starting.
Yeah.
That's the thing I can't do.
I'm gonna get an official one with like the swans on the front
Crunches.
and the lake, so it'll be better than that.
Absolutely not. Should I be doing this? No, so actually they just wanted to do
I do.
I can see that.
Crunches behind me. I'm on 30 pounds, and I do 3 sets of 10. Sometimes it's good. I tell you, the hardest thing is my biceps. Oh my God! You should see me trying to bring that bar up.
Oh, I have no strength. In fact, I think that's how I did this.
Oh, by the way,
Was
that's if we start
with
late.
Nolan, golf tournament.
Oh, yes.
Saturday I didn't go, Sunday I did. And I thought, well, while they're gone, I'm gonna mulch. Well, just picking up those bags is just too much, you know.
I feel better. I think my triceps, I'm getting stronger because I do 30 pounds. But when you do it this way, I twisted this arm and I shake it.
That's nice.
This one, yeah, I told her.
Could you have like a vegan food truck at some point?
Over at Elton?
I don't know. I don't even know one. Maybe you could research it. I think that would bring in a different like demographic.
Switching sideways.
I will. I'll think about it. There is this really good. It's called Sandy Bottom Bowls, and it's acai bowls.
Exactly, that's
Like
what women are.
peanut butter and
Only thing I know
fruit
about
and
the
granola.
park itself.
That'd be a good idea.
They're not gonna do anything to that.
That's a lot of weight.
No, this was it.
I will.
That's the only thing I know he said that
But
they wanted to
I
do.
feel good doing it.
I like to be diverse.
Oh, I feel
And
really
When I get up in the morning, when I get up in the morning, I can
There was a surveyor, there was a survey state over at Abbey Webb.
I was to the point where I wasn't really soaring.
All right, good evening, everybody.
before I went on vacation.
We're going to begin in about 30 seconds. Please ensure your cell phones are on silent or off. Council members, ensure your microphones are on.
Is mine on? Hi, Bill.
All right, today is July 18th, 2022. It is a committee of the whole meeting for the Barberton City Council. Before we begin our committee of the whole meeting, we're going to kick it off with individual committee meetings. And first up will be street, sidewalk, and lighting with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order the Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting Committee. It is Monday, July 18th at 6 p.m. Members of my committee are all present. I'm Chair Erica Bailey and Shorter Griffin. Other council members are here as noted, and other guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion: I have a piece of legislation, a request, a letter from Service Director Todd Shreve requesting legislation authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a professional engineering services contract with Burgess and Nyepel for engineering, design, and bidding services for the replacement of a 6-inch water main with an 8-inch water main on Wisteria Drive from Azalea Boulevard to Azalea Boulevard and a small portion of Columbine Drive. And then this does include complete resurfacing of the road. We are asking for emergency wording on that, and this was referred from the utilities. It came out of their committee July 11th. And we had, let me read this here first. There was 4 bids that were received. There was one that was lower than B&N, but it wasn't complete. It was an incomplete bid. So Burgess and Nibel was the lowest bid at $76,200. And the funding for these services are available in the 2022 Water Distribution Capital Budget. Does anybody have any questions from my committee? No? From the body? From the audience? No? Good. And do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Bailey, do I have a second?
A second.
Mr. Griffin? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. There's no pending legislation, so I will open this up to my committee if they have any miscellaneous discussion. No? To council members? No miscellaneous? Anybody in the audience? Nope. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Bailey, second.
Second.
Mr. Shorter, and we are adjourned at 6:04 PM. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to call to order the Committee of Environmental Health and Social Services. It is July 18th. We are in council chambers, and it is 6:06 PM. All members are present, which is myself, Mr. Jaber, and Mrs. Angeloff. All other council members are as noted, and all others that are present are noted on my sheet. There are no topics of discussion, no requested legislation, and no pending legislation. Is there any miscellaneous discussion?
I don't have anything.
No? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second that, ma'am.
All right, we are adjourned at 6:06 PM.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call to order the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee meeting. It is Monday, July 18th, 2022, 6:06 PM here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, which include myself as chair, Mrs. Angeloff, Mr. Jaber, and President Greer. All other council members are present as well as any guests present will be noted on my sheet. We have no new requests for legislation. We do have pending legislation. The 25th will be the third readings for the Truson Farm development, that being the zoning request, TIF, CRA, and the PUD. We will also have the second reading of the DORA next week. Are there any questions about pending legislation? Mr. Jaber?
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Any emails or calls regarding negative or positive?
I have not received anything.
Any other council members from the constituents?
On the DORA, is that what you're,
Yes.
nothing?
And also choose the farms, Truson Farms, anything?
Nothing.
I haven't got none either.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will open this up for miscellaneous discussion from the committee. Do we have anything? Okay. Council members? Gallery? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mrs. Angeloff. And a second?
I'll second that, ma'am.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:07.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Next up is a Special Rules Committee with Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is July 18th. Time is 6:08. All members of my committee are present. We have a special request here. We have a letter from Trevor Hunt, Director of Planning and Community Development, requesting legislation approving the fiscal year 2022 Community Development and Block Grant Program, CDBG, Annual Action Plan Budget. Emergency wording requested. Do we have Mr. Hunt here?
Yes, thank
You
you.
want to give him a little heads up on this?
Sure. We're
Lori, were you able, I don't know if this was included in the packet, were you able to, this is just the list from last time?
They've got all.
They got it all?
Yes.
All right, thank you, City Council. I'm here, you may remember I came back, I came to City Council about a month ago to talk about the proposed budget for the 2022 fiscal year CDBG. We had this past Thursday, our budget cycle, our public comment period concluded. And subsequent to that, there was a meeting at Planning Commission Thursday, July 14th, a public meeting where Planning Commission members recommended to the City Council to approve the CDBG budget as shown. During the process, there were 2 public comments, both from City Council members, and I did have a brief conversation, I believe, with both Councilman Heidick and Councilman Griffin. I'm not sure, I hope that all their concerns were satisfied, but you know, I'm here tonight to answer any additional questions. And really the highlights from this year's budget, last year we got a comment to increase acquisition and demolition. We did increase that by roughly 15,000 more. And then overall our budget increased roughly $8,000 from last year's budget. And we also received we also proposed a bump of roughly, you know, I guess 27,000 for economic development. This was largely to encourage property maintenance and improve upon some code violations in our downtown. So the economic development grant was boosted for facade loans. There's a program with tuck pointing that we're about to roll out here soon. So those were the major highlights. If anyone has any questions, I welcome those. And turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the council? Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make that motion.
I will second that.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, I have a second piece of legislation tonight regarding, I'm requesting a resolution of support in applying for grant funding through the William G. Pomeroy Foundation Hunger for History Marker Grant Program. If awarded, this grant will provide a marker for the history and significance of fried chicken in the Barberton community. I request the first reading passage and emergency wording so that the grant application can start as soon as possible. And I would like to have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 402. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do you-
302.
302, okay.
Yes, sir.
To suspend Council Rule 302.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion passes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. All in favor?
Well, I'll make a motion to call for it,
Okay.
because we just suspended for it.
We just suspended for, okay, so
So I'll
now,
make a motion to call for it.
okay.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. President. We are adjourned at, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Second, we're adjourned at 6:14.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. 1 second. Next up is a special utilities committee meeting with Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call a special utilities meeting to order at 6:12. All members are present, as well as all other council members. The committee consists of myself, Carol Fry, and Erica Bailey. We have a late request for legislation, for which we will be invoking Council Rule 702 suspend Council Rule 302, the 10-day rule. This is a letter from Todd Shreve, Service Director, requesting legislation to authorize a change order to be added to the construction services contract with North Bay Construction Incorporated, authorized by Ordinance 76/2021. This order is necessary to rehabilitate 4 sludge tanks that have failing walls and lids. This project has several facets and will more proficiently be completed as a change order to the current contract. The cost of the change order is $1,114,856. $999,000 of ARPA funds were approved by the ARPA committee to be used, and the remaining balance will come from sewer funds of the 2022 budget. We're requesting emergency wording so that the project can continue to move forward. So before we have any other discussion, do I have a motion to suspend?
I'll make a motion.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, would one of the 2 department heads care to elaborate on this for us?
Sure. As I'm sure all of you know, we're in the middle of a $5.6 million upgrade at the wastewater treatment plant. It's the 3rd phase of a 3-phase project that's been going on for quite a few years. Much of the work is being done in our sludge processing building. That's where these 4 tanks are located. Mixers are being replaced in those tanks. There's conveyors that go over the top, as well as quite a bit of other work. When those tanks were drained, it was discovered that concrete was falling from the interior. From the outside of these tanks, they look fine. And the inside, everything that was above the water level turned out to be not such a great shape. They were evaluated a couple of years ago when we was going into this upgrade, and the deterioration has really advanced in a short period of time. So this took us by surprise. So in order for us to really efficiently move the project forward, this stops much of it right in its tracks. It also really impedes the operation of the wastewater treatment plant. One of the things we want to be processing in a timely manner is sludge. And I'm sure most of you know that is where most of the odor would come from at a wastewater treatment plant. So these are covered tanks. You don't want to leave those open. You want to get things processed as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, this was the only feasible way to get this done in a timely manner.
You stated to me that you were hoping to get these numbers in sooner, but they just came in this past
We
week.
just got these final numbers for, quote, a hard number on Thursday. So that's why this is late.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Weaver? Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. Was this part of the original upgrade plan?
The mixers, conveyors, and everything in that area is. The tanks was not. As said, it became evident when the tanks were cleaned, getting ready for the mixer replacement, and it was discovered that deterioration was something far beyond that we had realized.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Weaver?
Sure.
Yes.
I just want to say, Director Weaver, good to see you again.
Welcome back.
That's all I had there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weaver. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, this is a special, so there's no other discussion. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
We are adjourned at 6:18.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn. Next up, Finance and Personnel with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel, it is Monday, July 18th, 2022, 6:18 in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, which include Councilors Coburn, Thompson, President Greer with myself as chair. All others noted. We have one request tonight, a letter from Diane Stevenson requesting legislation to enter into a lease agreement with Meritech CCT Financial to replace current copiers. Emergency wording requested. The letter is, let's see, $877.19 a month for 63 months for a total of $55,262.97. The request is due to the lease on current copier through Toshiba is ending next year. She also goes on with, she leases one copier, and the copier coming off lease remains as a backup. Switching to Meritech, local company out of Cleveland, will save money on her current monthly lease, receive 2 new copying machines that will both be fully warranted, not require additional payments for supplies and service. Meritech will buy out the current lease and will take away both copiers to allow to retain the copier that is no longer being leased and use it for other purposes. She gave the last backup to the planning department. She goes on with, because we are able to use the copier for many of our technological needs, the money to pay for the lease is coming from the clerk's technology fund and will not affect the general fund budget. Are there any questions from the committee?
I have none.
Any from the body? From the gallery? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's it for requested. For pending, we have a multitude on our draft cover sheet, including, which is not on here, the third readings for the elected salaries and the 2 pieces of legislation required by the Board of Elections for the police capital police capital property tax levy, which cannot be used for wages. Are there any discussions on any of the pendings? Counselor?
Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath here. All I can say is that I'm a little disappointed in this council that we didn't spend a little bit more time on the elected officials' pay raises. I know there was several suggestions, but other than that, we never really had anything open on suggesting anything other than what Mr. Heide suggested. And I think that, I just think that's kind of strange that we're looking at compensation for elected officials, and as being an elected official, openly in council, publicly, we never really spoke about, percentages. I know Mrs. Bailey had, she was looking at percentages. I know Mr. Greer and Mr. Jaber were looking at separating that ordinance. But next week will be the third reading and the final reading, and when you're looking at discussions on the DORA, discussions on Trisham Farms and all that, and then you look at the compensation for elected officials, it was just, nothing really was said. And I just feel that, I don't know if council's okay with it. I mean, I'm not questioning anything. I'm just saying, I thought that was just really, it was just really strange that we just didn't have an open, honest conversation with each other of what we feel, that they deserve. This is, very hefty, their raise, and I do realize 4 years ago, they did not have a raise. That was a misunderstanding, a misfortune, is what I can say 4 years ago. But we did have a very open conversation with that. And I'm just a little disappointed that it was just, what it was said, and that's what we're going to vote on. But I just wanted to give you my 2 cents on that. I just thought that was, it's a big deal. It's a lot of money. I'm not saying that these positions don't deserve that. Everybody, and I said this 4 years ago, and I'm going to say it again, everybody deserves a raise. Everybody does. And I just feel that that conversation, we just didn't have that conversation. So that was just my 2 cents. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there any other discussion from the council? From the body? All right, well, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:23.
Thank you. Being that committee meetings only lasted about 22 minutes, are we fine rolling right into the committee of the whole meeting this evening? Does anybody need a break, want to take a break? All right. Well,
I'd like about an hour.
can't give you that. I can give you a minute. All right, well, we'll roll right into the committee of the whole meeting this evening. All right, so again, today's Tuesday, July 18th, 2022. This is a committee of the whole meeting for Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 6:24 PM. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Citizens addressing council?
There are none.
We have one.
Is there somebody that?
No, he said no. Oh.
Apparently, we do have one.
Sir, I can give you like a minute to fill that out if you want to speak. Or you can speak and fill it out at the same time, please.
Sure. So, I'm not even actually, sorry.
Before you start, please state your name, address, and what you'll be talking about today. You do have 5 minutes, and a reminder that council will not respond back. You're just addressing council this evening.
Sure. So I'll fill this out afterwards, and if you don't want to just leave it up here. So my name's Chris Davis. I met you all a few weeks ago on the issue about the development out at the corner of Turkeyfoot and Lockwood Roads and the effect on the school district. So I'm not really sure if this is true, but I heard you're voting on this tonight, and it's very likely to pass. Is that true, first of all?
No, sir.
Okay.
Next week.
That is good news to hear. So I still want to say a few words. So thank you for not bringing it up today. The superintendent of the schools could not be here tonight for personal reasons. Hopefully he can attend next week. So he and I probably both will be here at that time. But we still have not, to my knowledge, had really any substantive follow-up contact or conversations with anybody in the city or with the mayor's office. So that continues to be a concern for us. Again, this could have a huge impact on country schools. And I just have like I'm not going to read the article, I'm just going to start with the first two sentences. Can you imagine your local school board passing a resolution that allows a company to pay no property tax for the fire department and the police department? You know, of course not. That would be crazy. Everybody here would be, that is unfair. That is essentially what this proposal before you is doing to the school district. So again, as we've said in the past, we have received some correspondence from the developer saying, you know, they don't think there's going to be kids basically living in this neighborhood, which I think is a disservice to Barberton if true. I thought that was part of the whole goal, is to like promote the city, promote families, get things going here. So we received an email saying, probably no kids here, but there's nothing behind that. So again, with even a small amount of children per household in this community, it will really destroy Coventry schools academically, financially. So please consider this. We'll be back next week. Thank you for the update on the date. We heard today was going to be tonight. So that's good news, and I will see you again next week. Please think carefully about this upcoming week. Please encourage folks to reach out with the city to our superintendent in country schools to discuss this further. We'd really like to have more input in this process. So thank you, and I will.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Just put it up here.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. Rolling to committee reports. We'll start with Mrs. Angeloff on street, sidewalks, and lighting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, Sidewalks, and Lighting Committee met this evening. All members were present. All council members are present and guests as noted on my sheet. We do have one topic of discussions, the legislation request from our service director, Todd Shreve, requesting legislation authorizing the mayor of his designee to enter into a professional engineering service contract with Burgess and Nyepel for engineering, design, and bidding services for the replacement of a 6-inch water main with an 8-inch water main on Wisteria Drive from Azalea Boulevard to Azalea Boulevard and a small portion of Columbine Drive, and to also include complete resurfacing of the road. We're asking for emergency wording, and this was referred from the utilities and brought out of their committee July 11th, 2022. It had passed out of our committee, and we had no pending draft and no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. Mrs. Thompson with Planning, Annexation, and Codes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning and Annexation and Codes met this evening here in council chambers at 6:06 PM. I had no new requests for legislation. We do have several pieces of pending legislation, which includes the for the Truson Farm development. The third reading for those will be next week on the 25th, and also the second reading for the DORA will be that night as well. As far as miscellaneous discussion, we talked about the pending legislation. None of us have really gotten any feedback lately, so that's all we had. We adjourned at 6:07, so with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Coburn with City Utilities.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities had a special meeting this evening. All members were present and others noted. We had a request, a letter from Todd Shreve, Service Director, requesting legislation to authorize a change order to be added to the construction service contract with North Bay Construction Incorporated, authorized by Ordinance 76/2021. This order is necessary to repair the walls and tops of the tanks that we were working on, and we needed emergency wording. We invoked Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302, the 10-day rule, and this was brought out of committee, and we will be voting on it next week. With that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn. Mrs. Fry with Public Welfare and Safety.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Welfare and Safety Committee met last week on Monday, July the 11th. All members were present, as well as all council members, and all members of the committee, as well as all council members, and guests as noted on my sheet. We had one request for legislation. It was a late request. It was for emergency legislation to prohibit camping upon public property within the city of Barberton. Emergency wording is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, and safety in Barberton. Everyone should have received this piece of legislation in their packet this week, and this piece of legislation is to enact a new section to our codified ordinances. It will be 642.37. And with that, Public Welfare and Safety will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Fry. Mr. Griffin with Rules, Marketing, and Development.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development have a special meeting tonight. We met tonight to discuss a letter from Trevor Hunt, Director of Planning and Community Development, requesting legislation approving the fiscal year 2022 Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, Annual Action Plan Budget. Emergency worded requested. So we had to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. We had a discussion. It was passed, and we voted on it. It's out of committee, so we'll be voting on it next week. Correct? Okay. And we also have special requests from, I think it was from the Hunger for History Marker Grant Program from William G. Pomeroy Foundation. This grant will provide a marker for the history and significance of fried chicken in the Barberton community. I request first reading, passage, and emergency wording so that the grant application can start as soon as possible. Okay. So we had to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. We voted on it, it was passed, came out of committee, and we'll vote on it next week. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Mrs. Bailey with Environmental Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Environmental Health and Social Services Committee met tonight at 6:06 in council chambers. All members were present, all council members were present, and all others were noted. There was no new requested legislation or pending legislation, nor miscellaneous discussion. We adjourned at 6:06 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. Mr. Jaber, City Properties, Parks, and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties Park Recreation met July 11th at 6:01 p.m. Location council chambers. All members were noted, and also guests. We had one request for legislation, a letter from Don Patterson, Director of Parks and Recreation, requesting legislation appropriating $5,000 from the unappropriated item of the Barberton Community Foundation to the Parks Department capital budget of the Mum Celebration Fund. Emergency wording was requested. We had a motion for that, and we voted, and that passed. We had pending legislation and draft. We had a tile purchase of 107 5th Street, and ordinance number 97-2022. And we also had accept donation of property 67 21st Street, ordinance number 99-2022. Miscellaneous discussion, we spoke about the camera system, we're waiting for the mayor and parks director to move forward with that. And we adjourned at 6:04. That I pass, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jaber. Mr. Heidick with Finance and Personnel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel tonight called for a letter from Diana Stevenson to enter into a lease agreement with Meritech to replace her current copiers. And that, with the other from last week, partnered with Councilor Jaber there with Parks, the appropriation from the Parks Department for the Mum Fest, the appropriation for the maintenance budget for the general fund capital budget, general fund operations and maintenance budget, and with that, we pass.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. That concludes the individual committee reports for this evening. Is there anything from council? Any other council members? Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to remind everybody that our citywide euchre championship, I guess you could say, is tomorrow evening at the Moose at 6 o'clock, and everybody's welcome. We have 12 teams from several different establishments around town, and they'll play until someone wins the trophy. So I'm really excited. We've got several baskets to raffle off. We'll also do 50-50. We've raised almost $1,400 so far just from the registrations to play in the first round, so I'm hoping that we can maybe double that tomorrow. So that's all I have.
Awesome news. Is there any other council members? I have two things. Last week I handed out census data. Those were just generic numbers. Census data is being compiled, and I will have more in-depth census data over the recess, and then when we get back, we'll have legislation. So just a heads up, we'll have legislation to discuss on ward boundaries. August 1st, we do have a special legislation, and that is all I have. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. First, the request from Mr. Griffin. I do have copies of that letter for everyone. Wasn't sure if that was going to be discussed tonight or not, but I've got copies for everyone. Okay.
Here, Pat.
COVID, we continues to be present. We continue to keep an eye on it, work with all of our partners. With the new strain out there, or variant, it's more contagious than the previous ones. The number of cases and hospitalizations has really gone up quite a bit throughout the country. We have a call tomorrow with the health department and Summit County Executive Eileen Shapiro's office on more definite numbers. But Some communities throughout the country, more on the coast, the west coast, are going back to mask mandates. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but things are starting to ramp up again. So continuing to keep an eye on that. Vaccination clinics are still being established. But again, as I mentioned the last few weeks, it's best to contact the health department if you or your constituents have any questions, because there's a lot of differences in the first vaccine versus a second vaccine versus a booster, and also, based on age and pre-existing health conditions. So call the health department; they can get you or your constituents in the right direction. So. Met with Metro RTA today, and they are having a job fair on August 6th. And I also have a handout for council on that. Looking for bus drivers, they have reduced the age to drive a bus from 21 to 18. You just need a valid driver's license. With this job fair, a little different than most job fairs where you walk around, you will actually be able to get behind the wheel of a bus and test drive it.
Test drive.
So,
Okay. All right, I like that.
So they have a 5-year plan. You start out around just over $17 an hour. If approved, and within 5 years, you could double that. So a lot of nuances with Metro and their compensation package, but we're trying to get further details for bus driving positions. Last week met with 3 developers, and we toured several buildings throughout downtown. Their interest in Barberton and the downtown is growing, and so we will continue to meet with them and see if we can get something to pop here. And hopefully very soon have some exciting news for everyone. The proposed property tax levy for police capital, this is so very important. It's important to provide the necessary capital for the safety forces. Years ago, voters approved the exact same millage for fire, and we've been able to provide fire department with their capital needs and leverage grant money for those needs as well, saving taxpayer dollars. So if this is approved by City Council and goes on the November ballot, I hope all of you will support this publicly and at the ballot. Continuing with business visits throughout town, last week we met with reps from the BWXT, and they are growing. They've already exceeded their numbers from when they went through the $80 million expansion from several years ago. And through attrition and general loss of employees, still looking for more employees. So we met with them and the Greater Akron Chamber of Commerce. And we've met with them previously with State of Ohio and some other organizations to try to get them the resources they need. But manpower is the #1 resource that everyone needs. So whether it's Metro or BWXT, City of Barberton, everyone is looking for employees. So continuing on that front, but BWXT is doing fairly well. Farmers Market is in full swing with a variety of vendors. So if you haven't been down there, I urge you to go down there. Somewhat with that, we've had some crazy rain events, which just increases the humidity, and looking at some 90-degree weather days this week. So it's kind of be prepared for almost anything these days, right? So we're keeping track of all that, keeping track of the measurement of the tributaries coming into the town, making sure that any trees that may be knocked over due to lightning or wind are picked up as quickly as possible. And then also making sure that we should all check in on loved ones and neighbors and friends and family who may not have air conditioning, because that humidity can really increase the temperature within someone's house. So just be cognizant of that. Then just lastly, the summer concert series is also in full effect, including Tuesday afternoon concerts, noon concerts, Friday evenings, and then a few concerts we're going to have in the parks. We're going to bring those back as well. So that's all I have. Are there any questions? Yes.
Thanks, Rick. Any updates on Messiah Temple? Nothing going on? I had a couple constituents ask me if we're going to stay with that as a courthouse, or is that going to become something else that we're aware of or not aware of yet?
No updates.
No updates. Then for the Coventry, is there a reason why there's no communication with the Coventry schools yet, or?
We gave the developer is the best person to talk to Coventry Schools.
Okay.
They have our contact information. We gave the developer their contact information, and obviously they reached out to Coventry Schools, so I don't know if there was just that one email or not. Prefer to have the developer answer any questions since they're the ones developing the property. But I have not received any communication from Coventry Schools either. So,
Thank you.
anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes our committee of the whole meeting this evening. This meeting is adjourned at 6:43 PM.
You trying to get the ones you don't like?
No, I like it.